Hey there, and welcome to week 7. This is exciting. We're going to be entering into unit 2 today. So we're going to be doing all things chords. All right, so we're going to do our syncopation exercise. We're going to do our learn about chord inversions. We're also going to group our chords into chord families on the circle of fifths. We're going to learn about relative minor, okay? And then we're also going to be doing our sight reading, all right? So without further ado, let's head on over to the drum and get warmed up. Okay, here we are in our week 7 rhythm warm-up. We're going to start out normally today, but when we get to the 3rd and the 4th line, we are going to try something a little new. But first of all, let's just go ahead and get started. Line 1 is going to be at the usual 40 BPM, and it's going to represent the downbeats. So here we go. 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and switch your hands. Left hand on top. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and hands together top line. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. There we go. All right, let's move on to line 2. We're going to speed our metronome up now to 45. And this is going to represent our upbeat. Now watch out for those big spaces that I put at the beginning on the first measure of this line. All right, so make sure that you're really internalizing those downbeats. Here we go. 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3, 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 3 and switch your hands. 1, 2 and 3, 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 3 and hands together top line. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and. Excellent. Okay, so now usually what we would do on line 3 is we would put our metronome down to 25 for halftime because we will be going at 50 BPM but having our metronome play half of the beats. And we're still going to do that. But here's the thing. If we started out with all 4 downbeats and now we're going to cut those downbeats in half and just have every other downbeat, either the 1 and the 3 or the 2 and the 4, well, we also just had all 4 upbeats. So we can do the same thing with upbeats where we take away half of the upbeats and our metronome is only representing either the 1st and the 3rd upbeat or the 2nd and the 4th upbeat. So we're going to put our metronome at 25. We'll be going at 50 BPM and the metronome clicks are going to represent the upbeat of the 1 and the 3. We'll be on line 3 and here we go. 1, 2, 3, and here we go. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 hands. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and hands together, top line. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and. There we have it, all right? And then we're going to speed the metronome up for the last line. We're going to speed it up to 30, which means we will be going at 60. And now let's imagine that instead of the first and the third upbeat being the metronome, we're going to imagine that the metronome is on the second and the fourth upbeat, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, and 2, 3, and 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and switch hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, and 2, 3, and 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and hands together. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. There we go. Now you may have noticed there that between the second and the third measure, we had a tie that was actually going across the bar line. And that does happen. So I threw that in there today so we can see more of these mysterious things that we may see when we're out in the wild playing real rhythms. But great job today. And now we're going to head back over to the piano. Okay, now that we're all warmed up, let's go ahead and talk about grouping all of our chords into chord families on the circle of fifths. So as we can see, this is our completed circle of fifths. And, you know, at first glance, when you're thinking about getting into chords, you might be like, oh boy, I just learned 12 individual scales. Now it's time to learn 12 individual chords, and I'm going to have to remember all these different things. But actually, the cool thing about chords is that they're actually a lot easier than scales, because we actually can group them together into more similar shapes. So what we're going to do is we're going to color code this, and you are welcome to do this on your circle as well, okay? So the first color that I'm going to choose is going to be green, and I'm going to, as you can see up here on F, C, and G, I'm going to color code those all together, all right? Then I will do the next three in red, and we're going to explain these colors in just a moment, but let me go ahead and fill them in for us, okay? I'm going to do some blue over here. And then finally, we have purple. All right, so now that's already starting to look a little bit more accessible. We have 4 different colors here instead of 12 different chords. And now let's go ahead and explain what these colors mean, all right? So the first color that we see is up here at the top of the circle, and this is what we're going to be doing this week. We're going to be dealing with these 3 chords, and I like to call those chords the white, white, white chords. So we put WWW right there, and that's because all 3 of these chords on the piano are made with 3 white notes, okay? Next, over here on the red, we have the white, black, white, because all 3 of these chords are going to be a white note, a black note in the middle, and then a white note on top, all right? Over here, we're going to skip the purple for just a second. We're going to come over here to the blue, which is the opposite of the red. We have the black, white, black, okay? So these are going to be a black key, a white key, and then another black key. And then finally, we have the purple family, which I like to consider the irregular family, right? It's sort of where we just group everything that's not exactly like the others. And so the first thing that we have is the B and the B flat. And the reason those are a little bit strange is because they're the only chords that are non-symmetrical. So for B, we have a white and then two blacks. And for B flat, it's the exact opposite, where we have a black and two whites, okay? And then down here for G flat, it was the only one that is actually all three black notes, okay? And so we're gonna go ahead and put it in that purple family since all the families have three chords in them. And here we have it, all right? So I would highly recommend that you get out your crayons or your colored pencils and you color code your circle like I did, all right? Now, let's also talk about one more thing before we move away from the circle of fifths. Okay, and start our chord inversions. But the next thing we're going to talk about is, so far we've noticed that on our circle we have our do to so and do to fa, whereas if this is C, the so is going to be G and the fa is going to be F, right? So that's the relationship of adjacent keys on the circle. But one relationship that we haven't really talked about yet is the do to la, okay? Now la, do, re, mi, fa, so, la comes right after so. It's the sixth scale degree, and it's very important because the la indicates the relative minor, all right? Now here's the thing. You might think, well, isn't the minor of C, C minor? But actually that's not true, and we're gonna take a look at that on the piano for just a second while we talk about what is the difference between a regular C minor and the relative minor of C, okay? So here we have our piano. We know that C major is a C, an E, and a G. If we want to create a minor chord, we lower the middle note by a half step and we get a darker minor sound, right? So why is C major and C minor not related? Well, as you can see, the black note in the C chord already means that the C minor is related to another key that has black notes in it. So that means that if we actually go up to the la, do, re, mi, fa, so, la, and then we have A, right? And if we use all white notes here, right, then we have an A minor chord. Now we know that if we had an A major chord, we would have that C sharp, right? But we don't have that in this key. So if you, instead of playing from do to do, if you played from la to la, using the exact same key signature as the major, so in this case we have no flats and no sharps, we're gonna play from A to A, all white keys like this. There we go, okay? So we have the relative minor. It shares the exact same key signature as the major. Now the C minor scale, the actual C minor scale, we can call that the parallel minor because it does have the same root as C major, but because you could see those three black keys in there, it's related to another scale, another key signature that has E flat, A flat, and B flat. We'll get there eventually, okay? But let's just focus on C major and A minor right now. Let's return to our circle and fill that out, all right? So underneath your C, you're gonna wanna put the la relationship, okay? So here we have our A. All right, now let's go ahead and finish this for just the chord family that we're gonna be doing today, these green chords, all right? So for F, if we look at F, we have F, G, A, B flat, C, and D. So our F chord is going to be a D minor. And then for G, we have G, A, B, C, D, and then E. All right? So the three chords that we're going to be dealing with now are F, C, and G, and their relative minors, which are D minor, A minor, and E minor, which all three have the exact same key signature as their major scales. So now let's talk about what a chord inversion is. As you can see on this table here, I've written a generic chord inversion progression using just do, mi, and so, all right? And we can extrapolate this to all chords. Next to those solfege symbols, I have written fingers. And the best thing about these chords is that this is the universal finger patterns for all of our chords. So unlike the scales, we're not going to have as many finger patterns to remember. We're just going to use these exact same fingers for all of the chords, all right? So I'm not going to have to write this table out over and over, because the sooner you internalize this, it's not very hard, and you don't have to read it off the page, the better, okay? We want to get these things into us. We want to be able to do them on the piano. We don't want to just simply read them off paper, all right? Now, you'll notice it's usually 1, 3, and 5. There are a couple places where you use your second finger, once in the right hand and once in the left hand, and that's it, okay? So it is very simple. Now, as you can see, the process of inverting refers to, we start in our root position, all right? The do, mi, so that we've seen as we've been practicing at the end of every scale. And we take the bottom do and we move that up to the top of the chord, so that now we have a mi, a so, and then a do. We call this first inversion, okay? Then we continue this process and we take the mi off of the bottom of our first inversion chord and we put it on top of the stack. And now what we get is second inversion with so, do, and mi. And then finally, when we take that so off the bottom and we put it back on top of the stack, we are returned to our root position, all right? Now, as we are inverting our chords, it's important that we not only ascend, but remember, we play the piano in both directions, so we're gonna wanna practice ascending inversions and descending inversions, and those are gonna look something like this on our piano. Okay, let's put our hands on the keyboard now and see what it's like to invert chords. We're gonna start with our F major chord and its relative minor D minor. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna put our hand up on the piano and we're gonna find that F, A, and C, the white, 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 and we're going to take the F and we're going to move it up to the top of the stack. And we're going to be in first inversion now, A, C, F. Now we're going to take the A off of the bottom and we're going to put it on top of the stack. And now we're playing second inversion. And then finally we're going to take the C off of the bottom and put it on top of the stack. And now we're playing F, A, C. We've returned to root position, but an octave higher. And now we're going to go backwards. We're going to descend. Just like that. We're going to take the A off the top now. We're going to put it on bottom. And now when we take the F and we put it on the bottom, we return to our root position, okay? And so now we're going to see that in our left hand. We're going to start in our root position. We're going to go up to our first inversion. Now we're going to go up to our second inversion. We're going to take the C off the bottom, put it on top, and return to root position. And now we're going to descend back to our original root position. And finally, we're going to do this hands together, all right? So it'll be like this. Root position, first inversion, second inversion, root position, second inversion, first inversion, and root position. All right? When you practice this, take as much time as you need. All right? It can be tricky coordinating all 6 fingers at the same time when you're putting it hands together. Stay patient and go as slow as you need to. All right? Now let's check out D minor. We're going to do first with our right hand. This is the relative minor of F. Okay, let's do our left hand. And now we're going to put it hands together. There we go. Now we're going to move over one place on the circle and let's take a look at C major. So we'll start with our right hand. We'll go up to first inversion, second inversion, root position, back down to second inversion, first inversion, root position. Let's do our right hand, I'm sorry, our left hand. Here we go. All right, and now I'm going to put it hands together. All right, now let's do the relative minor of C major, and that's A minor. All right, we'll do it with our right hand first. I'm sorry, I need to start lower on this keyboard. Here we go. And now we'll do our left hand. And finally, let's do hands together on A minor. There we go. And now we have one more chord to play from this chord family, and that's G major. So let's do it in our right hand first. All right, now we're going to do it in our left hand. And now we're going to do it hands together. Fantastic. And last but not least, let's do E minor, which is the relative minor of G major. All right, so here we go. We'll do our right hand first. Now we'll do our left hand. And then we're going to put it hands together. There we go. So take as much time as you need to practice those. I went through them quickly just for the sake of time here on this video, but please take your time. Now, if you are finding this very easy and you do want to take this one more step further, one other thing that would be nice to add to this would be to play the relative minor scale and the major scale of each chord, right? So let's look at those three very quickly. First, we're just going to take a look at C major, and we're going to go, if you remember, now that we're all really good at scales from Unit 1, and now we're going to go down to the La, to the A, and we're going to play in the exact same key signature, but from A to A now, like this. Same finger pattern. All right, there we go. Let's try the same thing for F, all right? So now we're gonna go down to La. We're gonna play in the exact same key signature, but from La to La or from D to D. There we go, and remember we're using the same finger pattern from major, so you don't have to worry about that. And last but not least, let's try G major. Go down to the La, and play from La to La instead of Do to Do. Okay, so before us we have a tune called Melodic Tune, and it's a nice little piece. that's going to use some chords that we've been talking about. Notice it's a little bit longer than what we've been playing. Now we are going to be playing about twice as long, a full page. If we want to take a look at the time signature, notice how we're going to be in 3/4. And now that means that we're going to have 3 beats in every measure. And that beat that they're talking about is going to be the quarter note, right? So we have 3 quarter notes in every measure. All right, 3/4 is a very cool time signature. There's a very famous style of music called the waltz, and the waltz is exclusively in 3/4. All right, it's a very danceable feeling. But what we're going to do before we jump in and actually start putting our hands on the notes is we're going to do a harmonic analysis, okay? The composer threw in a little wrench here, because if you'll notice, you look at the key signature, you say, okay, there's no sharps and there's no flats, so that must mean that the 1 is equal to C major, right? But actually, if we take a look at these notes, we'll notice that it's actually the very last note is G, and here we have this chord, we have this chord, we have this chord. It's very prevalent all over the piece. So that must be the main chord of the piece, but we can definitely tell that that's not a C major chord. We see that space, 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 which is what gives it away that it's a chord. But if you just notice, if you read that bottom note, you'll see it's a G, all right? So we're actually in the key of G, but it's being written in the key of C. And I have a theory about this. Why did Louis Kohler write this in the key of G, but then actually use the key of C when he wrote it down, okay? And the reason is because when it comes to music, the ear and what you hear always goes over what you see, all right? This is really important. Sometimes people will argue things that are written on the paper, but what really matters in music, just like what really matters on the piano, is that you remember the shapes of the keys, and it doesn't really matter what you call them. Well, what really matters in music is what you hear. If you're hearing something that is in the key of G, yet it was sneakily written in the key of C, that means it is definitively in the key of G, because it is the ear that is the most important, has the last say in this, all right? Now, we will look at how Louis Kohler got away with writing in the key of C, although using G, but not using an F sharp. Let's go ahead and do our harmonic analysis, and we can kind of see how he fudged his way around this. So our 1 chord is going to be G, B, D, all right? We're going to see the 4 chord, which is our C chord, and we are also going to see a D chord. Now, here's the thing, all right? In a normal D chord has that F sharp in it, and then the A. And that is why we need the F sharp when we play in the key of G. But remember, we've talked a little bit about those dominant chords when we add the 7th scale degree of a chord. And in this case, we are going to be using a 5/7, all right? And the 7th scale degree of the D chord in this key would be the C, all right? So that's how Louis Kohler got away with not including F sharp in the key signature, because he took advantage of that top note of the 5/7 chord, the C, which gives us a nice little half step down to the B in the 1, right? And he didn't have to use F sharp, okay? Anyways, let's check this out. So if we look through this, we can quickly see that this entire line, I'll draw a little arrow as best I can, emoji arrow, is this entire line is 1. Now, what we have is we keep that we keep the G in the bottom note, but we raise the other 2 notes, and what we have is a C chord, the 4, right? But it's in an inversion, and this is a very interesting concept, okay? Inversions are not just for moving the chord up and down the piano, it's also, they make it easier to connect chords, because instead of having to play a G chord and then pick your hand up and play a C chord, you can actually take advantage of the fact that those 2 chords share a note, and you can keep that note constant while just 2 notes move, all right? And we're going to see a lot more of that. In fact, at the very end of our chord unit, we are going to exclusively study this concept called inversion blending, okay? So there we have our 4 chord, and that brings us back to our 1. All right, now we have another long stretch of 1 right here. Here, finally, at the bottom is where we get to that 5/7, right, where we have the A, the C, and the D. And then of course, that's going to bring us back to our one chord at the very end, okay? So let's go ahead and play the right hand of this, then the left hand, and then put it hands together. All right, I'm going to start with my right hand. Now we are in G, and we're going to start in G position, and it's going to go something like this. So far, it's just been notes of the G chord. Now watch out for this pinky needs to lift up to the E right there, go one above the D that it has been on, and return back to the B, all right? So watch out for those measures right there. I'm gonna do that one more time where we're on the C, another C. Now reach your pinky up to E. All right, now we're gonna keep going. So we're on the third line here, back to the B. And again, these are just notes of the chord. There it is, all right? Now the left hand is gonna be very boring. It's just gonna be arpeggiating chords, and it's gonna go like this. A nice classical time-keeping bass line. Here's the inversion blending, back down to the 1. Another 4 measures of G. But you can really feel that 3. Here's our 5/7. All right, and when you put it all together, it sounds like this. There we have it, okay? Now, don't forget that once you get that down hands together, you can also add that layer of dynamics. We start off with a piano, which is the dynamic for quiet. We have when we repeat this phrase again, we actually start it in forte. We have a few decrescendos where you're supposed to get quieter. Now, I also have a theory that decrescendo can also stand for slightly slowing down the tempo, which I think we kind of do here at the end. We want to kind of have a nice, just bring it in, a nice landing, right? So you might want to consider that last decrescendo to also slightly slow down at the ending for a nice little dramatic effect, all right? And also, don't forget, most of the time your hand is going to be in G position, but there's this one part where your pinky gets to shine and show how cool it is by reaching up and playing one key above G major position to hit that E. There we have it. Week 7 done. We've started on our journey for chords. Like I said, we had a lot of new information today, but we're going to be talking about the same thing for quite a while now, so it should level out and start to feel pretty normal soon here. We're going to be visiting the white, black, white chord family and all of their relative minors next week. I also have a fun sight reading piece that we're going to be doing. We're going to sort of leave the classical section for just a moment, and we're going to venture into the blues, all right? So do a little bit of the fundamentals of jazz there next week, so that's going to be a lot of fun. But until then, happy practicing with these chord inversions and maybe even some scale review, right? And I'll see you next week.